Twilight fell slow across the desert, laying gold and violet light over the wide plain, the kind of light that makes a man forget his own shadow for a while. Caleb Dawson rode with his head low, shoulders tired, hat brim tugged down as though to hide the years of disappointment carved into his face. His horse, Dusty, carried him without hurry, hooves dragging over the brittle earth, as if both man and beast bore the same invisible weight. Prairie wind sighed through the mesquite, and the scent of dry sage carried on the air. They had been together too long for Caleb to call the animal merely a horse. Dusty was a brother, a listener, the one soul who never judged him when the town whispered his failures like church hymns. That evening, as the sun bled low, Caleb found tears pricking his eyes. An old cowboy does not cry for himself, he thought, but for the creature who carried him farther than any friend. It happened sudden as lightning. From under a tangle of brush came the sharp hiss, the violent coil. Dusty screamed, reared back, Caleb thrown hard to the dirt. He rolled and saw it. Rattlesnake's head flashing like a whip, fangs buried deep in Dusty's foreleg. The snake rattled once more, then slid into shadow as though swallowed by the earth itself. The world grew terribly still. Caleb scrambled to his knees. Dusty staggered, foam on his lips, eyes rolling white. Caleb pressed his hand to the wound, fingers shaking, then reached for his knife. He cut into the flesh, sucked, spat blood and poison, bound the leg tight with his bandana. His hands moved fast but clumsy. He knew, too, while the venom ran quicker than he could chase it. Dusty's body trembled beneath him, breaths ragged, heartbeats slowing. "Don't take him," Caleb whispered hoarsely, tears cutting dust from his face. "Not him, too." His voice cracked open into a raw cry, rising and scattering into the indifferent sky. In his mind came flashes. His ranch sold off to cover debts, neighbors turning their eyes away, his sister's letter returned unopened. All he had left was this horse. And now even Dusty was slipping away. Caleb pressed his forehead to Dusty's mane, sobbing into the hair that smelled of sweat and earth. The prairie gave no answer, only the dim hum of crickets and the slow throb of pain in his chest. Dusty sank to the ground, legs folding, sides heaving. Caleb knelt there helpless, knife slack in his hand, watching the light dim in his companion's eyes. A sound came then, soft, almost lost to the breeze, the steady rhythm of footsteps approaching. Caleb raised his head, startled. Out of the dusk, a figure moved, her outline lit by the last streak of sunset. A woman, dark hair braided back, carrying a woven pouch at her side. She walked as if the desert itself carried her steps. Caleb's first instinct was fear. His hand went to the revolver at his hip. An Apache on open land meant danger. At least that's what every settler's tale had taught him. Yet before he could speak, she was beside Dusty, kneeling with calm authority. Without looking at Caleb, she ran her hands over the wound, eyes focused, expression unreadable. "What are you?" he started, but his voice cracked, tangled between suspicion and desperate hope. She pressed her ear close to Dusty's chest, then opened her pouch. Inside were herbs, strips of cloth, a small stone pestle. She spoke words in her own tongue, low and rhythmic, stroking Dusty's mane. Caleb's revolver slipped back into its holster almost without thought. "Can you save him?" The question stumbled out of him, naked and shameful. Her gaze flicked up, dark and steady. "Snake's poison runs quick," she said softly, "but I have a cure." She chewed leaves into a paste, pressed it into the wound, wrapped it tight. Her fingers moved certain, patient, as if she had done this 100 times before. She cut shallow incisions above the bite, drawing the venom outward, whispering all the while. Caleb knelt dumbstruck, watching, half afraid to believe. Dusty shuddered. His breath came uneven, then steadied. His eyes flickered with fragile light. Caleb exhaled as though air had been given back to him. He bowed his head, relief and disbelief tangling in his chest. Night gathered around them. The desert cooled, stars pricked the sky. The woman built a small fire with dry brush, the flames licking quiet warmth into the darkness. Caleb sat across from her, awkward, words fumbling at the edge of his mouth. "Thank you," he said finally, voice rough. He wanted to call her Miss, as if courtesy might cover his unease, but the word felt thin. She did not answer him, only laid her hand on Dusty's neck and whispered again. Her profile glowed in the firelight, cheekbones sharp, eyes shadowed, mouth set in calm determination. Caleb saw faint scars on her wrists, signs of old bindings or battles. She carried grief, he realized, yet her back remained straight, her gaze unbent. He studied her the way a thirsty man studies a well, hesitant yet unable to turn away. Their silence pressed heavy, but it was not hostile. It was the silence of strangers bound by the same fragile thread, his horse's life. Finally, she spoke. Horses carry our burdens, but they feel our wounds too. Caleb blinked, surprised by the truth of it. His lips parted, and before pride could stop him, he said, I talked to him, you know, like he was my brother. She looked at him then, not with judgment, but with something quieter, steadier. A faint recognition. The fire popped between them, sparks rising into the night. And for the first time in years, Caleb felt not utterly alone. As dawn crept pale across the horizon, Dusty breathed easier, chest rising steady. Caleb sat slumped by the fire, exhaustion dragging him down. His last sight before sleep took him was the woman tending the embers, her face calm as stone, her hands resting gently on the creature he loved most. Tears dried on his cheeks, leaving only salt and the faintest spark of hope. Morning spilled pale and gold over the prairie. Dust clung to Caleb's boots as he walked beside Dusty, who limped but lived. The horse's head bobbed with weariness, yet his breath was steady. Caleb's heart swelled each time he heard it. Beside him, the woman walked with her pouch slung across her shoulder, quiet as the dawn. She had not told him her name, but he knew already she carried something more enduring than words. They reached town near midday. Wooden boards creaked beneath boots, and shop windows flashed judgment like mirrors. Whispers rose even before Caleb tethered Dusty to the post. The sight of him was familiar enough, a man sunk by debts, a cowboy living on the edge of scorn, but the woman at his side drew sharper glances. Her dark braids and steady gait announced what she was. Clara May, standing on the boardwalk with her arms folded, leaned toward another widow and whispered loud enough for Caleb to hear. He's fallen so low he keeps company with savages now. The words struck like stones. Caleb flushed, heat crawling up his neck. He kept his eyes on Dusty, but he felt the weight of every gaze pressing down. The woman walked as though she carried no burden at all, her chin lifted, her silence louder than their laughter. Sheriff Amos stepped out from his office, hat low, eyes narrow. Dawson, he said flat, you still owe half your grazing fees. And I be mindful about who you bring through town. Some company ain't welcome. His gaze lingered on the woman. Caleb's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, but found no words. Shame knotted his tongue. The woman stood unmoved, her calm shield. Caleb finally nodded stiffly, muttering something about supplies. The sheriff gave a grunt and turned away, leaving dust and judgment in his wake. Inside the general store, Caleb bought flour, salt, and a sack of coffee. He hesitated, then added dried beans and a tin of sugar. The shopkeeper raised a brow when he handed the items to the woman, but Caleb ignored it. She accepted the small offering without flourish, a faint acknowledgment in her eyes. A quiet act of grace passed between them, unseen by anyone else. That night they camped near a creek. The water whispered over stones, carrying moonlight like a trail of silver. Dusty grazed close by, his limp easing. The woman ground herbs between stones, applying fresh poultice to his leg. Caleb watched, struck by her patience, the precision of her hands. He cleared his throat. Why help me? He asked. You don't know me. You don't owe me. Her hands never stopped their work. Because life is sacred, she said softly. Even the life of a horse. Even the life of a man who cries. The words burned through him like truth spoken by fire. No one in town saw him that way. To them, he was failure, debt, shame walking in worn boots. Yet she saw something else. Not weakness in his tears, but proof that he could still feel. He reached into his pack, pulled out the last of his coffee rations. Here, he said, pouring into a tin cup and sliding it across the fire. She hesitated, then took it. For the first time her mouth softened into the faintest smile. Caleb felt it stir something long buried, a warmth not of fire, but of being seen. Wolves howled distant that night, their cries threading through the darkness. Caleb loaded his rifle, standing watch. The woman set torches in the ground, firelight pushing back the shadows. At first, he thought the wolves drew nearer. Then he saw the truth, two ranch hands from town, staggering drunk, eyes mean. "Well, look here," one slurred. Cowboy Dawson found himself a new bride. The other laughed, spitting near the fire. "Reckon that horse will pay his debts, if we take him." Caleb's stomach knotted. His hands shook around the rifle. He was no longer the fearless boy who once rode wild. Shame had hollowed him, left him trembling. The woman rose, her figure framed in firelight. She faced them with quiet defiance. "Go back," she said, voice calm but cutting. "The land hears your lies." The men jeered. One swung his whip toward her, leather cracking. Caleb's chest surged with panic. For a heartbeat, he nearly froze. Then something in him broke free, not pride, not anger, but the need to protect. He stepped forward, rifle leveled, voice steady for the first time in years. "This horse, this woman, you'll not touch either." The words hung in the air like a strike of thunder. The ranch hand sneered, weighing him, but the resolve in Caleb's eyes burned too fierce. Behind him, wolves howled again, closer now, as if the land itself echoed his warning. The men muttered curses, spat into the dirt, and backed away into the night. Their boots faded into silence. Caleb lowered his rifle, chest heaving, sweat cold on his brow. Relief and trembling pride tangled inside him. The woman placed her hand on his shoulder, just a touch, brief yet steady. No words passed between them. None were needed. Dawn rose slow, soft light spilling across the plain. Dusty grazed in the grass, strong enough to lift his head and snort at the morning. Caleb watched, a lump in his throat. He turned to the woman, gratitude filling him, but what he felt was larger than thanks. Her cure had not only drawn venom from his horse, but something darker from him. His shame, his silence, his belief that he was beyond saving. The old soul within the tale whispered then, as though to anyone listening. The West is cruel, yes. It breaks men down, leaves them hollow. But sometimes it sends a stranger with steady hands, one who binds not only the wounds of flesh, but the deeper cuts no eye can see. If you carry shame, if you feel the scorn of the world pressing heavy, remember this. Healing often comes in silence, in the form of grace you never expected.